Earlier, Reverend Al delivered a very powerful speech in this building last night. He revisited some of the controversial comments Donald Trump has made over the years about race, contrasting them with Kamala Harris's record.
I stand before you as the president of National Action Network. We do not endorse candidates, but we report where candidates stand on criminal justice, economic empowerment, health equity, and other issues. On one side of this race is Donald Trump, a fellow New Yorker I've known for 40 years. Only once in that time did he take a position on racial issues. He spent a small fortune on full-page ads calling for the execution of 5 innocent young teenagers. On the other side is a woman that I've walked with in Selma, Alabama to commemorate the 59th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. Kamala Harris spoke to me that day about unity and passing bills. All I ever heard from Donald Trump was how he can get an advantage. I see one candidate who wants to protect the right to vote, while the other has tried to cook up 11,000 votes in Georgia. I worked with Kamala Harris. In every job she's had, she has consistently committed to making government work for those of us who've been disadvantaged. All Donald Trump has been consistent about is making himself richer and sowing division to get that done. This man sat right here in Chicago a few weeks ago, refusing to apologize for claims that migrants were taking black jobs. Well, in November, we're going to show him when blacks do their job. And we are going to join with whites and browns and Asians, and we're going to do a job on those that have done a job on us. Tonight, we are going to realize Shirley Chisholm's dream. "52 years ago, I was one of the youth directors in her campaign for president. And 52 years after she was told to sit down, I know she's watching us tonight as a black woman stands up to accept the nomination for President of the United States. This November, we will go forward to fulfill the promise of a just and fair nation. And let me say, as we transition, I'm a preacher. And in Psalms it says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. We've endured January 6th. We've endured conspiracy theories. We've endured lies and areas of darkness. But if we stay together, black, white, Latina, Asian, Indian American, if we stay together, joy, 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 joy coming in the morning.
Rev took him to church last night. I mean, that was obviously Kamala Harris got the biggest ovation, but the swelling, I'm sure you felt it up there at the podium, was something special. What was it like to give that address last night? And what did you really want to drill home to this crowd?
Well, I really wanted to drill home the fact that we are in a very serious point in American history, and that we should not take lightly that we're dealing with not just an election, but a selection. Are we going to save democracy and the principles of that and have someone that exemplifies that in Kamala Harris, a prosecutor, one who worked away, single mother, and did everything that America celebrates, or someone who is now a convicted felon who wants to tear the country apart by playing people against each other. And I wanted to bring that clear choice and say there is a joyous outcome to this if we all come together and stay together. But we need to understand the price that you have to pay for that. And I felt the spirit of that. And I really, as it was swelling out of the audience, I went over time. But I felt that it was necessary to put the right perspective on it. And only thing I didn't do is talk about how much Midnight Oil Joe Scarborough spent writing my speech.
That was it. Your chief speechwriter, Joe Scarborough. As we mentioned earlier, Rev brought up Trump's comments about a group of black and Latino men who were wrongfully convicted, infamously, of raping and beating a white female jogger in New York City. That was back in 1989, at which point Donald Trump paid for this full-page ad to run in several major newspapers, pushing for the death penalty for those men. They are now free and are called the Exonerated Five. And they shared their story with Rev last night.
My name is Corey Wise. 35 years ago, my friends and I were in prison for a crime we did not commit. Our youth was stolen from us. Every day as we walked into courtroom, people screamed at us, threatened us because of Donald Trump. He spent $85,000 on a full-page ad in the New York Times, calling for our execution.
As my friend Corey Wise just said, 45 wanted us unalive. He wanted us dead. Today, we are exonerated because the actual perpetrator confessed, and DNA proved it. That guy says he still stands by the original guilty verdict. He dismisses the scientific evidence rather than admit he was wrong. He has never changed, and he never will. When they see us, America will finally say goodbye to that hateful man. We will say what I have said after 7 long years of wrongful incarceration. Free at last. Free at last. Free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
You know, Eddie, it was so moving, and so moving that, again, these men who were jailed, wrongfully jailed, wrongfully incarcerated, and had Donald Trump calling for their execution, even after the DNA evidence came back to prove they were not guilty, even after there was a confession that proved they were not guilty, Donald Trump kept calling for their execution. And yet, remarkable that talking about patriotism, even as they got up, wearing their USA hats. Yeah. And even as we heard the incredible story of one of the speakers going from incarceration, being incarcerated wrongfully, to being a city councilman. You heard chants of USA, USA erupt throughout the arena, saying only in America, only in America. And joy does come in the morning. Right. Justice does come if it is fought for, if it is pursued.
Right. You know, Joe, America is more than an idea. Lonnie Bunch, the secretary of the Smithsonian, told me once. America is an argument. It's a battle over our better angels and our worst angels. And, you know, in this example, I mean, I was listening to Corey Wise, and my heart went out because he was 16 years old. He was the oldest of the 5 young men. Of the 5 kids, babies, really.
Innocent.
And he ended up being sent to an adult prison. And so the wounds, the scars that they carry with them. But to see that moment last night was a really, really powerful moment of what we can be, of what we could be, of what we are in certain pockets. So
if they
again,
can see it.
Exactly.
If they can see the possibility.
Exactly.
Even after everything they've been through.
Right.
And John Meacham, there was that phrase, better angels. And that's what this is going to be a battle for over the next several months now. We move past the conventions, we go toward the debate, and we move towards voting when it begins. And it is the clearest decision that we have had as voters in my lifetime. You know, yesterday, I must admit, I'd be cynical enough by now, but when I see an article yesterday saying that Donald Trump, and I hope it's a fraud, I hope it's not true, but when I see an article that Donald Trump is going to be holding an award ceremony for January 6th rioters,
A fundraiser.
and a fundraiser, openly embracing that, just as he compared it to Martin Luther King's March on Washington a few weeks ago. And you have a guy who has said he's going to jail journalists. He's going to jail political opponents. He had his lawyers argue that he could even get SEAL Team 6 to assassinate his political opponents, and he would still be immune from prosecution unless he was impeached. You hear this, and it just keeps coming faster and faster. Donald Trump keeps behaving more and more erratically, and yet this race is still tied. Mm-hmm. This race is still tied. Yeah. It is unbelievable, and it's unbelievable. And forgive me for going on here. It is unbelievable for the people that you and I both know, who hear Donald Trump doing these things, and still desperately seek to justify voting for a man who started riots, embraced those riots, now are comparing those riots to the March on Washington, and is even throwing an award ceremony for rioters who helped lead to the death of 4 police officers.
Yeah, I was fascinated by the recurring theme. Would love to know whose idea it was and the intellectual roots to it of the week from the podium, which is we must listen. We must meet people where they are. Absolutely true. If we don't see each other as neighbors as opposed to rivals, democracy doesn't work. That said, you can listen to people and still believe that they are wrong. And I think you're exactly right. I would argue it's the most important election since not just 1860 and 1864, but 1868. So here, Mika, get ready. This is going to be fun. Yeah, I know. It's going to be exciting. But I was thinking, because this is what I do, because I lead an exciting life. Right. I was thinking the other day, what was an election where it was probably 70-30 in American history, right? Outside of the George Washington stuff. And so I started poking around. And I was thinking, well, 1868, right? Andrew Johnson's been impeached. Black folks are largely enfranchised in the South. A lot of former Confederates from my part of the world are still not allowed to vote. Surely when U.S. Grant, the champion of union, the most famous, it was called the most famous American in the world, surely when he ran for president, that was a huge landslide. Because he ran against a white supremacist former governor of New York named Horatio Seymour. You did not have Horatio Seymour on your list. I was thinking that has to be 70-30. It has to be 80-20. It was a 4-point race, right? Where you had the champion of union running against somebody who wanted to take us back, eradicate the sacrifice of 750,000 casualties. America is always a close-run thing, because it is a human enterprise, and our appetites and our ambitions and our frailties tend to win out. The remarkable thing is that occasionally the better angels win. The impulse to generosity wins. And the acceptance of the argument made in very compelling terms, I believe, by this convention, that in fact it is not necessary for someone else to fail for you to succeed. That's what, when people say, oh, you talk about democracy, it's too abstract, the hell it is. That's what this is. It is a chance for all of us to rise as far as we can. And so I think it's vital I think the stakes have not changed. And I think that in many ways, the former president is going to get worse, and in the event he ever gets better.